Hey everyone, what's going on? Ash here with some updated thoughts on Yooka-Laylee based on the Nintendo Switch version, which is just now being released. Of course, those of you who follow Yooka-Laylee or, care about it, have been following news about it, know that Yooka-Laylee released for other platforms, PS4, Xbox One, and Steam, way back in March of this year, so Nintendo fans have had to wait almost a year for Yooka-Laylee to land on their platform of choice, which is kind of ironic when you consider that, so obviously being based on Banjo-Kazooie, a lot of fans felt that Yooka-Laylee, or a game like it, was mostly at home on Nintendo hardware anyway. So it's a bit ironic that we've had to wait this long for the Switch version. However, I am happy to say that the wait appears to have been worth it. I have not played the entire game on Switch, like I did back on Xbox One for the review. However, I have played the first third of it or so, and I have to say, it's a lot. This is the way Yooka-Laylee should have launched back in March. It's a lot more stable than the Xbox One version was at launch, and even post-patch, the console versions got a patch a little bit after they launched, which really helped smooth out a lot of the technical issues that I encountered when I was reviewing the game, and definitely just made the console versions smoother overall. However, the Switch version of Yooka-Laylee, in my opinion, is even more solid and more stable than that. Really, this feels like a much more solid package right out of the box. Very little frame drops, very few frame drops, very little stuttering in general. It is still there. You will occasionally still get dropped frames. Sometimes you'll get a little stuttering when spinning the camera around sometimes, but in general, the frequency of these things happening is far less than it used to be, and it's like night and day between the Switch version and the Xbox One version pre-patch. Absolutely night and day. Yooka-Laylee on Switch is a much more technically sound and stable experience on the Switch. Now, of course, that, it comes with drawbacks as well. Straight up, the Switch obviously is not as powerful, hardware-wise, as the Xbox One or PS4, so you are going to notice a bit of a visual downgrade if you're coming from other versions of the game. In my opinion, coming from the Xbox One version, the visual downgrade is slight, but it's noticeable. However, it's not to the point where I feel like the game is suddenly unattractive or looks bad or feels like a rushed port. Not at all. It's very clear to me that Yooka-Laylee has been optimized for the Switch as much as possible, and I think there may be something to that, because as I understand it, only the Switch and the PC versions were actually developed in-house by Playtonic and Team 17. So yes, you're going to be looking at a visual downgrade from, other consoles to Switch, but it's not as much as you might think it would be, and honestly, if you're playing on handheld mode, it's very hard to notice in general, and that's something I kind of want to touch on, period, is that playing Yooka-Laylee in handheld mode feels particularly nice. It's hard to say why. I mean, the game runs perfectly well, whether it's docked or on handheld mode. Either way, it runs fine. But playing on the Switch's screen in handheld mode really makes it harder to notice the graphical downgrade that has, taken place between other consoles and Switch. And so, yeah, I mean, when you're looking at Yooka-Laylee at 720p on the Switch's smaller screen, it's just a nice-looking game, and you really wouldn't notice that there has been any graphical downgrade from other versions. And I have to say, that's actually been my favorite way to play it. I've been playing it in TV mode with every controller, the Pro Controller, the Joy-Con, and it all works fine. Controls feel great on the Switch. Actually, I would say controls feel a little better on the Switch, or at least the Switch's controllers, than they ever did on the Xbox One's controllers, so that's a nice little point in the Switch version's favor as well. But yeah, I've been playing on TV mode under every control scheme, and in handheld mode, and I have to say the game does feel particularly nice in handheld mode. Again, you're not noticing those graphical downgrades as much at 720p on the smaller screen. But I do want to stress that even when you're playing on TV mode, while you will notice graphical downgrades from other platforms, it's still, a pretty nice-looking game. It's not going to blow you away, especially compared to something like Super Mario Odyssey. But it's still a nice-looking game, and it's so much smoother and runs so much better than other console versions did, or at least the Xbox One version did at launch. So that's a huge point in its favor. Going back to the controls for a little bit, I do want to point out that unfortunately there is very little support for extra features like HD Rumble. In my experience playing, I only felt any HD Rumble when I was using Laylee's sonar attack. And I'm sure there are other examples of it later in the game, but in general I feel like it's very underutilized, and I feel like they could have done more there. So that's a bit of a shame, but in terms of actually playing the game, the controls really do feel fantastic. And I feel like the Switch's controllers just end up feeling better and work out better for Yooka-Laylee than the Xbox One's controllers did. So yeah, I think I've covered mostly everything. However, there is one other kind of caveat I want to touch on with the Switch version, and that is loading times. Loading times do seem to be worse across the board for the Switch version than they were in other versions, or again, at least the Xbox One version. The initial loading, I've timed out a few loading times here, and the initial loading time when booting up your save file or starting a new game entirely is about 45 seconds, which is pretty long, and it doesn't get much better from there. Going from the hub world to a stage took approximately 37 seconds, around that, and then going from a stage back to the hub tended to take around 30 seconds. So, you're not getting super frequent loading times, but when they do happen, they're pretty long. So do know going into the Switch version that loading times are a problem on the Switch version, a little bit more than they were in other versions. In fact, I don't remember loading times particularly being a point of contention at all in the Xbox One version. So that's something I definitely noticed with this version. And then finally, I just really briefly want to touch on co-op, which I unfortunately didn't get to test, really, at least not test as much as I would like. But I do want to note that it is in the game. The co-op seems to be kind of Mario Galaxy style or Mario Odyssey style, where the second player is controlling a pointer on the screen, which can interact with the game in various ways. So again, I haven't really had much of a chance to test it out myself. Hopefully I can do that in a follow-up video, but I wanted to make it clear that, the Switch version of Yooka-Laylee does ship with co-op, which is pretty cool, but this co-op is not what you might be thinking, where one player controls Yooka and one player controls Laylee. That would, probably break the game in a lot of ways, so I wanted to make it clear that is not what's happening here. So that about wraps up my thoughts on the Nintendo Switch version of Yooka-Laylee, but before I wrap up here, I did want to do a quick recap of my original review of the game based on the Xbox One version, just to make it perfectly clear where I stand on the game after all is said and done. Now, if you go back and check out my original review of the game, you'll note that I gave it a very, very tentative like it, and that was because, despite the flaws, I felt that there was a good game underneath all of the technical problems that the Xbox One had at launch. Thankfully, those technical problems are no longer, whether you're playing a console version post-patch, or whether you're playing the Xbox One or PS4 version post-patch, or playing the Nintendo Switch version. Those technical hurdles are not there anymore, and so really you can much more easily get to the game underneath. And that game underneath is still flawed, I want to make that clear, It's obviously based on Banjo-Kazooie, it's meant to be a Banjo-Kazooie type experience for a new generation, but it is, across the board, not as good as Banjo-Kazooie, or, really even Banjo-Tooie in a lot of cases. So, I want to make that clear. There is still some rough game design here, some rough edges. The moment-to-moment gameplay isn't usually as fun as Banjo-Kazooie's. The worlds aren't as well designed. Especially the more open designed worlds. They're the more kind of go anywhere and do anything in any order type worlds. There isn't always a lot to do from point A or between point A and point B, so, the moment-to-moment gameplay isn't as strong as Banjo-Kazooie's, and it's important that I make that clear. However, that doesn't make Yooka-Laylee a bad game. I mean, there are some rough edges, but the game is still fun, and I've actually been having a good time even revisiting it, replaying the first third of it so far for this, this Nintendo Switch updated impressions video. So, even though I haven't played replayed the whole game on Switch like I played the whole game on Xbox One, I'm still having a good time revisiting the parts of it that I have, and the game doesn't feel necessarily like a slog or a chore to play, so I'm very comfortable sticking with my like it rating. I do like Yooka-Laylee, and I think that if you're going to play it on console, the way to do it is the Nintendo Switch version, so straight up. And that about wraps up my thoughts here. So, as always, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, and follow us on social media. You can find all the links you need in the video description below. Otherwise, keep it on GameXplain for more on Yooka-Laylee, the Nintendo Switch, and all things gaming. Until next time, guys, bye!